The darkest enemy you will ever face is not out there. It lives within you. Most people spend their lives waging war with the world, fighting circumstances, others, and fate. But Jung reminded us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The true battle has never been outside. It's the one inside your psyche, between the self you show the world and the self you refuse to see. This hidden part is what Jung called the shadow, the unwanted qualities we banish to the basement of our mind. Your rage, envy, lust, fear, jealousy, everything you decided was unacceptable. But whatever you reject doesn't die. It simply moves into the darkness and waits for its moment to speak. Look closely at your reactions, the anger you can't explain, the fears that paralyze you, the people you despise for no reason. Each is a mirror reflecting your shadow. The world is not against you, it's reflecting you. You can run from it, rationalize it, or bury it under achievements, but the shadow never forgets. It shows up in your dreams, your habits, your relationships. You don't control what you refuse to know, and until you face it, it will continue to live your life for you. When you were a child, you were whole, complete, spontaneous, alive. You didn't know what parts of you were good or bad, you simply were. But soon, you began to learn which parts of you were acceptable. Your parents, teachers, society, they all handed you invisible scissors, and piece by piece, you began to cut away what didn't fit their picture of a good person. Maybe they told you, don't be angry, don't cry, be nice. So you pushed those emotions into the shadows of your psyche. Jung called this process the creation of the persona, the mask you wear to face the world. But every mask has a cost. For every smile you learned to fake, a real emotion had to be buried. And what's buried becomes your shadow. The shadow is born the moment you split from your wholeness. When you say, "This is me," and secretly whisper, "That is not light." You divide yourself into light and dark and then forget that both were always you. And from that moment, the shadow begins to live its own secret life. It hides behind politeness, behind ambition, behind your achievements. It wears 1,000 faces, but none of them are yours. Here's the paradox. Jung discovered the more you try to be good, the stronger your shadow becomes. Because the more light you shine on the mask, the darker the hidden self grows behind it. The only way to stop it from controlling you was to turn and face it. Once you've pushed your unwanted parts into the dark, they don't disappear. They act from behind the curtain. Jung warned, whatever you repress will return as fate. Your shadow doesn't die. It simply changes shape. You see it in your anger at others' arrogance, in the jealousy you hide, in the people you condemn. These are not random emotions, they are projections. Your own shadow appearing on the screen of the world. Projection is the mind's clever trick. It lets you see outside what you cannot bear to see within. You hate the liar because you fear your own deceit. You despise the weak because you can't face your own vulnerability. And the shadow is patient. It waits behind every reaction, every judgment, whispering, "Look at me." But you rarely listen. You tell yourself they are the problem, and the pattern repeats. These repetitions are not coincidences, they are complexes, emotional knots formed by forgotten pain. They pull your strings when you think you're in control. That sudden rage, that urge to sabotage love, that's the complex acting out your shadow's script. Every time you say, "Why does this always happen to me?" that's the shadow speaking through your fate. You are reliving what you refuse to resolve. Life keeps presenting the lesson until you face the teacher. But this is not punishment, it's invitation. The shadow wants integration, not exile. It knocks on your door through conflict, failure, heartbreak, hoping one day you'll stop blaming the world and start listening within. There comes a point in every life when the old ways stop working. You've chased perfection, avoided pain, played every role, and still, something inside you whispers, "This isn't who I am." That voice is your shadow calling. Jung taught that healing begins when we stop fleeing from the unconscious and turn toward it, not to conquer it, but to listen. The shadow doesn't need to be destroyed. It needs to be seen. Imagine sitting alone in a quiet room. No screens, no noise, only silence. At first, that silence feels uncomfortable, almost frightening. But if you stay long enough, the silence starts to speak. And what it says is everything you've avoided hearing. You begin to see fragments of yourself, the anger you hid, the jealousy you denied, the pain you never grieved. They appear not to harm you, but to return home. Each emotion is a forgotten child, waiting for your embrace. Jung called this process shadow integration, a sacred dialogue between the conscious and the unconscious. When you sit with your pain without judgment, you reclaim power from it. You realize the shadow was never evil, it was the part of you you abandoned. So, instead of asking, "How do I get rid of this?" ask, "What is this part of me trying to say?" That question changes everything, because when the shadow feels heard, it transforms. In that moment of awareness, something powerful happens. You stop seeing your darkness as an enemy. You see it as a teacher. The shadow becomes the guide leading you back to wholeness. So breathe. Stay with it. You're not falling apart. You're meeting yourself for the very first time. Integration begins when you stop trying to erase your darkness. Enlightenment isn't about becoming pure light. It's about bringing awareness into the dark. Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. The goal isn't perfection. It's wholeness." So how do we integrate the shadow? First, acknowledge it. Say its name. Yes, I'm angry. Yes, I'm jealous. Yes, I feel small. Naming the emotion brings it from the unconscious into the light of awareness. What is conscious can be transformed. What stays buried controls you. Next, listen. Don't argue with your shadow. Ask it, "Why are you here?" Every emotion has intelligence. Anger demands respect. Sadness asks for gentleness. Fear requests protection. When you honor the message, the energy begins to heal. Jung believed that every shadow contains gold. The qualities you suppress, power, passion, creativity, are the same ones you need to live fully. To reclaim them, you must make peace with their darkness. This is the paradox of the psyche. The very emotions you feared are the keys to your freedom. Your rage, when understood, becomes courage. Your jealousy, when owned, becomes desire for growth. Your fear, when faced, becomes wisdom. Integration doesn't mean you never feel pain again. It means pain no longer rules you. You still feel anger, but it doesn't own you. You still feel fear, but you walk through it. That's what maturity truly is, the union of opposites within. This is the art of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are. Not who society told you to be, not who you pretend to be, but the totality of the self. So sit with your shadow. Hold it without fear. It is not your curse, it's your completion. Integration is not about light defeating darkness. It's about realizing they were never separate. When you accept your shadow, a quiet revolution begins inside you. The tension that once split you in two starts to dissolve. You no longer wake up trying to prove something. You begin to live as a complete being, light and dark, both sacred. Acceptance doesn't mean you like every part of yourself. It means you stop rejecting who you are. You make peace with imperfection. You realize that healing isn't about erasing, it's about integrating. In Jung's words, only the paradox comes anywhere near to comprehending the fullness of life. Wholeness doesn't come from choosing light over dark, it comes from embracing the paradox that both belong. As you accept, your energy changes. You become less reactive, more present. You stop projecting your wounds onto others because you've seen where they live inside you. Compassion replaces judgment. You begin to understand that every human carries a shadow, and the moment you forgive yourself, you start forgiving the world. That's how acceptance becomes freedom, because what you no longer resist can no longer enslave you. This is the essence of inner freedom, not control, but surrender, not denial, but awareness. The ego loosens its grip, and the self, the whole of who you are, takes its rightful place. When the conscious and unconscious unite, the inner war ends. You are no longer fragmented. You are no longer at odds with yourself. And from that stillness, true creativity and love begin to flow. This is freedom through acceptance, not a dramatic awakening, but a quiet realization you were never broken. You were simply unfinished. As the shadow integrates, something greater begins to awaken. Jung called it the self, the totality of your being, where consciousness and unconsciousness meet in harmony. It's not the ego's victory, it's the soul's reunion. Individuation, the process of becoming whole, is not about becoming special, it's about becoming real. You stop trying to imitate anyone else. You stop living according to other people's expectations. You start living in alignment with your own inner truth. That's why Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Most people spend their lives wearing masks, but once you integrate your shadow, you no longer need one. Authenticity becomes your natural state. And something beautiful happens. You stop seeing yourself as broken. You stop seeing others as enemies. You begin to understand that every person is fighting their own shadow, just like you once did. Compassion replaces superiority. The individuated self is not separate from others. It is connected to everything. You see yourself reflected in every face, every struggle, every story. The boundary between me and them begins to fade. This is wisdom, not intellectual, but existential. You no longer seek meaning, you become it. Because the moment you stop dividing the world into light and dark, good and evil, you realize it was always one. Jung once wrote, "No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. The deeper you descend into your darkness, the higher your spirit rises." That is the paradox of transformation. Your light is not found by escaping darkness. It's found by walking through it consciously. Every fear faced, every wound embraced, becomes fuel for your awakening. So when life tests you again, and it will remember you are not being punished, you are being invited. The shadow is not your enemy. It's the doorway through which your soul expands. And when you finally stop fearing your shadow, you don't just find peace, you find power. Because light is not the opposite of dark. It is what emerges when you've made peace with it. This is the path of wholeness, the path of the self, the journey from fear to awareness, from fragmentation to unity, from shadow to light. And in that union, you realize something eternal. You were never two. You were always one. You see, facing your shadow doesn't make you weaker. It makes you whole. True strength isn't found in denial. It's found in acceptance. When you embrace your darkness, you don't lose yourself. You finally meet yourself. Every fear, every flaw, every hidden desire, they're not there to shame you. They're there to complete you. Because wholeness was never about light alone. It was about learning to walk hand in hand with the dark. So I'll leave you with this question, simple but powerful. What part of your shadow are you ready to face? Take a breath and answer it honestly, even if just to yourself. If this message resonated with you, take a moment, hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Tell me what you discovered about your own shadow and how you've begun to see it differently. And when you're ready to go deeper into your inner world, Join me in the next video, Jung's Secret to Decoding Dreams. Because your dreams are not random, they are the language your soul uses to speak to you. This journey doesn't end here. It only begins each time you dare to look within.